It's time to eat.
What are you hungry for?
Sit down and get ready to consume an abundance of fantasy football knowledge from Ross Tucker and John Daigle.
Feed me now. I'm starving.
On the Fantasy Feast Eatin' podcast.
Yeah, let's eat, baby. It is the Fantasy Feast Eatin' podcast, presented, of course, by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. And yes, we are recording this a day earlier than we normally do because the NFL has 2 games on Christmas, 2 important games, actually, and it's fantasy football championships for a bunch of you, hopefully a lot of you, thanks to some of the wisdom you've gotten from John this season. You can check out my guy, John Daigle, on social media at NotJDaigle. He's fantastic. I think I take more notes for this show than any other show. Maybe this and Greg Cosell are the 2 things I take the most notes for. John's over at EstablishTheRun.com, where you can and should use the code FEAST to get a discount. Actually, a pretty cool holiday gift for somebody, especially if they're into playing DFS. You know, these last couple weeks of the regular season, then getting into the playoffs, it's a great way to give someone something that they'll really benefit from over the next, 6 weeks? Pretty awesome. John, let's dive right into it with these Christmas games, including the game I'll be calling on the radio. It's the Chiefs and the Steelers, Christmas Day, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we've got George Pickens listed as a full participant in practice on Monday, which is interesting.
Makes it an exciting one. Hopefully one that we can start off the fantasy championship round with a lot of points. We talked last week about how inefficient the Steelers offense has been these past couple of weeks without Pickens, dropping to 29th in yards per play without him the past 3 games. But when he and Russell Wilson have been on the field together, 10th in yards per play at 5.7. It's not only getting Pickens back either. All-pro defensive lineman Chris Jones for the Chiefs has a calf injury. I believe it's still listed as questionable. And when he hasn't been on the field, the Chiefs have plummeted to 30th in pressure rate in the league. So if we're not going to get pressure on Russell Wilson, and they're getting their best receiver, maybe even best player on offense back, there could be some points in this game for the Steelers to answer the Chiefs. And the Chiefs who have really got it going, oddly enough, around Patrick Mahomes' ghost ankle injury. Looked spry as ever last week on Saturday. And more importantly, have also been getting rookie Xavier Worthy more involved. The last 2 games now, Worthy has seen 29 and 27% of the team's targets with 3 carries in both contests. Hollywood Brown also returns from injured reserve, and in his first game, only run 16 routes, but is targeted on 50% of those 16 routes. And they used him similar to Rashee Rice with routes underneath and over the middle that could allow him to use his speed to get upfield. Patrick Mahomes actually released the ball in his quickest time from snap to throw, just 2.5 seconds in any game this year, because I think that's what the Chiefs are morphing into. A team that just gets the ball out quickly and then says, we have 2 of the fastest receivers in the league, and Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown, they can get open by themselves as long as we put the ball in their hands. And so that's probably what the Chiefs offense is going to become over the last month of the season and head into the playoffs. And I don't think any defense has an answer for that, at least right now. So I am excited about this game. A little bit worried, though, in the fantasy championship if you're starting Isaiah Pacheco, because similar to what happened to Nick Chubb, it just seems like he's been less of an efficient runner, unfortunately, since he's returned from injury. In his last 3 starts, just 3.1 yards per carry, and that's what led to Kareem Hunt out-touching him 13-10 this past week, including a goal line carry. So right now, I think, unfortunately, we just have to have a little more confidence in Kareem Hunt in this game than Pacheco.
Ooh, that's interesting. That's a good note. What about the Ravens and the Texans, the afternoon game?
Unfortunately, a little less faith in points being scored, especially on the Texans side of the ball in this game. We saw that damned injury for Tank Dell, going through another season-ending one to his knee, and quite honestly, behind him, the Texans have showed us that they just have no one who's been able to step up. They did claim Deontay Johnson on waivers. This will be the third team this year that Johnson is on, but also 48 hours is not enough time to turn around and play this game. And give them an answer behind Nico Collins. This game initially opened at 3.5 points, I believe, with the Ravens being favored at Sportsbook. At DraftKings Sportsbooks, it has since climbed dramatically because I think even Sportsbooks know the Texans aren't ready for this game against a Super Bowl contender like the Ravens. The Ravens are allowing a league-low 3.5 yards per carry. We've constantly seen offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick for Houston put the Texans in third down and distance situations that they've been unable to respond against. And behind Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz pops up a 21.6% target share, gets into the end zone, over 40 yards receiving. But again, that's what the Texans offense is now, is inefficient running against a very good running defense in Baltimore and only Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz. So not a lot of faith here for CJ Stroud in this offense, unfortunately, especially because, as everyone knows, it is December. There's a reason why this is Derrick Henry's month. Because in 33 career starts in December, Derrick Henry has averaged 91 rushing yards, 5.1 yards per carry, and scored 29 touchdowns. Justice Hill, injured last week with a concussion. Doesn't seem like he'll be able to turn around on Christmas. And if that's the case, we saw Derrick Henry step up and play on passing downs as well with 26 of 29 backfield touches. I think this is a game the Ravens, unlike last week where they got it done through the air, they just hand the rock to Henry and get the hell out of the way. So I love Derrick Henry in this game to just put it away.
Wow, okay. What about the Thursday night game? Seahawks and... Well, wait a minute. Yeah, you already mentioned Dalton Schultz. Seahawks and the Bears.
And this game is featuring my DraftKings pick of the week because Geno Smith, I believe, is in an incredible spot. 9 consecutive losses for Chicago, and more importantly for Geno Smith. Since Week 11, the Bears are fielding the worst defense in EPA per play. They're allowing the highest success rate on passing plays and 29.1 points per game in that time. If we remove Sam Darnold's struggles a couple weeks ago in what was a divisional rematch against this Bears defense, around him and the 5 starts for Jordan Love, Sam Darnold's first game, Brock Purdy, and Jared Goff, those quarterbacks collectively averaged 10.3 yards per attempt with 10 touchdowns and 1 interception against this Bears secondary. I think Seattle's passing offense in particular, through Geno Smith, is going to thrive in this game.
Love it. John's value pick is presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Now, let's speak about the rushing game because it's a little more complicated for everyone in the fantasy championship. Kenneth Walker returned, drowned Zach Charbonnet in touches altogether. While Walker was available this past week against the Vikings, Charbonnet just 1 touch off the bench. But Walker suffered another ankle injury at the end of the game and was unable to return. Again, this is a short turnaround given this odd schedule for Christmas week. So it does seem unlikely that Walker's going to play. We've seen in the past Charbonnet come in as an RB1 in 3 starts for Kenneth Walker. But also, I will tell you, Charbonnet is going through injuries of his own, including an elbow that he was listed with on the injury report. So, yes, you should pick up Charbonnet if he's out there. You should start him if he's starting in place of Kenneth Walker. But be on the lookout because the Seahawks, have to lean on Kenny McIntosh, their third running back, instead, if both Walker and Charbonnet miss this game. For the Bears, both Keenan Allen, DJ Moore get there in a blowout against the Lions this past week in Chicago. Once again, this game in Chicago too. And Keenan Allen has been the one who's been very successful from the slot the last couple of weeks, and it has been favorable matchups. We even talked about last week how the Lions have struggled against slot receivers. Keenan Allen was my pick of the whole bunch to lead them in fantasy points. This week, given Seattle's struggles on the outside, including last week against the Vikings when Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, all 3 of their touchdowns came from the boundary, I do think DJ Moore is the one I prefer if you have that choice for DFS.
Let's move on to the second game I'm calling this weekend. It'll be the Chargers and the Patriots. That's a Saturday 1 p.m. Eastern game on NFL Network. We got 3 games on NFL Network, including this one. I'm taking a lot of notes now, John, because this is the other game I'm calling. Want to get your thoughts on Chargers-Patriots.
I have more confidence in the Chargers now after that Thursday night performance against the Broncos. Not only good defense, but because Justin Herbert, we saw him hopefully beat through all of his injuries with 8 carries. Remember, a couple weeks ago, 0 carries. We were concerned that having suffered his 3rd injury, maybe he was just too banged up to get there healthy to the end of the year. But those 8 carries against Denver gave me a lot more confidence in not only his performance, but in the Chargers offense as a whole. And that's important because Gus Edwards is a player I'm predicting to have a very big week. Yes, J.K. Dobbins had his window activated, 21-day practice window, but I still think in such a short turnaround, I don't think they'll activate him for this game and just immediately throw him in there off injured reserve. I'm still giving one more start to Gus Edwards. And if that's the case, you just look at what's happened against this Patriots front 7 over the last month. Devon Achane finishes the RB6 with multiple touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor finishes the RB13 with over 100 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown. James Conner was the RB1 overall a couple weeks ago. And this past week against James Cook, he scores 2 touchdowns, finishes the RB4. On Thursday night, Gus Edwards handled a season high, or not a season high. He handled his highest share of backfield touches in any start over the last month without J.K. Dobbins, 68%. 15 touches to Kamani Vidal's 5. If that's the case again, I think it's such a favorable matchup for Los Angeles. They can lean on Gus Edwards yet again. So if he's out there on waiver wires, a player I definitely want to stream, even in 10-team leagues against this Patriots defense. For New England, it's just a little bit tougher because the ball continues to be spread out. Drake May's not a guy who leans into one player in particular. You get open and Drake May finds you because he's been so damn good, including averaging 4.5 rushing points per game, which heightens his floor. Now, in his 9 full starts this year, Drake May's actually the QB 12 in points per game in fantasy. That's how good he's been, despite not having a single receiver he leans on. Hunter Henry pops back up with another receiving touchdown. Hunter Henry also leads his team in target share from Drake May at 19.5%. I think that's where he'll choose to go in this game. But the receivers, including Kayshon Boutte getting involved for 60 receiving yards and a touchdown last week, they still continue to play an intermittent role with one another, 4 or 5 of them. So it's just hard to parse for fantasy. Hunter Henry will be my favorite option from Drake May.
That makes sense. Yeah, he's had a nice year. He's been one of the few Patriots that's had a nice year. All right, the next game on Saturday, it's the Broncos at the Bengals. I'll be on my way to the airport at that point, drinking some Labatt Blue Lights with my colleagues, Chris Rose, Steve Weish, my friends, living life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly beer. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Bengals, Broncos, John.
This is the highest total of Week 17. The only game so far, although the Bucs and Panthers, which we'll talk about in a bit, that game's trending towards being over 50. But right now, Broncos-Bengals, the only game all week with a total over 50, and that makes sense because you could argue the Broncos have had one of the easier schedules of opposing quarterbacks all year long, and their one true test against a Super Bowl contender in the Ravens and Lamar Jackson resulted in Lamar completing 16 of 19 passes for 14.5 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Even in the last month against this Broncos secondary, Jameis Winston reached 497 yards and 4 touchdowns. Justin Herbert on Thursday night, we talked about 284 yards and 9 yards per attempt. I don't think Denver has any answer for Joe Burrow in this passing game. And that's probably the part where people are questioning, oh, it's the Broncos defense. They can stop this offense. No. I don't think they can, especially for a Bengals offense and team overall that is still has their sights on the playoffs and they're not yet eliminated and continue fighting for their life. So you know who to get involved here. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown. That's where the offense runs through, no one else. So I love starting all my Bengals in the highest total of the week. On the other side of the ball, too, for Bo Nix, this is a Bengals defense that, yes, I understand they were able to stop Dorian Thompson-Robinson last week, but beyond that, we know you can do whatever you want against Lou Anarumo's unit. So if Bo Nix is out there as well, another situation where I love streaming him in the fantasy championship. For the backfield too, it gets interesting because last week Jaleel McLaughlin was ruled out and Sean Payton gave Audric Estime, the rookie, 9 carries. He goes over 40 yards and a touchdown, which were his most carries since week 10. This has happened before, but Sean Payton came out after that game and said Estime deserves more touches. And so if you're desperate, I know the last couple of weeks, because of the failures of some elite running backs, the lower seeds have had an easier time progressing. There's probably a 7 and 8 seed in a lot of leagues that are in the fantasy championship right now and grasping for straws for starters still on waiver wires. And if that's the case, given this total, I do think you can go pick up Audric Estime in a favorable spot against this Bengals defense. But really the moral of the story is, Ross, I want to start everyone in this game.
A lot of points expected between the Broncos and the Bengals. Saturday night is another interesting one. It's the Arizona Cardinals against the LA Rams. Cardinals are a very different team when James Conner's healthy or not and playing at a high level.
And James Conner suffered that knee injury this past week, and it was serious enough to where he came back in the second half, put on a jacket, left his helmet on the sideline, and just cheered his teammates along the entire game. I don't know if he's going to play this one. And quite honestly, with the Cardinals officially eliminated from the postseason now, I would expect him to sit. It still is questionable behind him, though, because in any other situation this year, we would say rookie Trey Benson is who is going to be started in place of James Conner. But also last week, Trey Benson suffers an ankle injury. He doesn't practice at any point ahead of week 16. And now there's this, again, a short turnaround on Saturday night. So we are definitely going to have to monitor the injury reports, because if Trey Benson is available, I would imagine he leads the backfield in touches and you can start him in fantasy. If Trey Benson is also ruled out with James Conner, then the fallback option would be Michael Carter, who we saw DJ Dallas, their fourth-string running back, score a 1-yard receiving touchdown at the goal line. But I will note, whenever James Conner was injured, including in overtime, Michael Carter out-touched DJ Dallas 9-0. No other running back got a single touch behind Michael Carter in that time. So Carter's the one you want to pick up and start if both Conner and Benson are ruled out. For the Rams, it's easier because, remember, they lost this first bout against Arizona in week 2, 41-10. But as you said, both of these teams are entirely different units now. In that game, remember, that was the one Cooper Kupp got injured, and the Rams were already without Puka Nacua, who was lost in week 1, and starters Steve Avila and Alaric Jackson on their offensive line. All are available now. And the Rams showed you against the Jets, they can beat you however the hell they want to. Matthew Stafford, not even a good day, only 19 pass attempts. No idea if that's because Sean McVay saw Quentin Williams ruled out for the Jets beginning before that game and thought that that's how they're going to attack them through the ground game. Maybe it was because it was 23 degrees out, so they just didn't think the ball could fly through the air. Either way, though, for Kyren Williams to get over 30 touches and lead the way with another rushing touchdown, it's a Rams offense that can beat you in a multitude of ways. So Stafford's still fine to start in this one, but I would expect it to be a completely different outcome here, especially with the Cardinals completely banged up.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what Kyren Williams can do after what Hubbard was able to do in that game on Sunday. Speaking of Sunday, we move on to the Sunday games. Crazy. There's 6 games before Sunday. 6
I know.
Before Sunday this week. Sunday at 1, it's the Colts and the Giants. I was there on Sunday in Indianapolis, John. Jonathan Taylor probably could have gone over 300 yards if they had kept giving him the ball. If they didn't have such a big lead. Then by the time they gave it to him again late in the game, they were just trying to run the clock out. But after the first play of the second half, he had 189 yards and 2 touchdowns.
And his first touchdown dance was, of course, his teammates trying to rip the ball out of his hands, and he was holding on to it as mimicking his fumble from last week. Jonathan Taylor, another great spot. Would have been my DraftKings value pick as well if I didn't like to try to sneak sleepers in there like Geno Smith and get a little cute sometimes. But Jonathan Taylor, obviously, an amazing play yet again here against this Giants defense, allowing a league high in yards per carry to opposing running backs. Also, another spot you can stream Anthony Richardson. Still provides a high floor last week. You saw a couple big runs, including his rushing touchdown in that one. But really, it's what this Giants defense has become. Now, in their last 3 games without stud defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence, they've dropped to 23rd in pressure rate. With him on the field, they were 8th in the league earlier this year. So it's also a defense that now is not hitting the quarterback, not crushing the pocket at all, which makes it easier for Anthony Richardson to step back and deliver it to Josh Downs downfield cleanly. So I do like those three players for the Colts in particular, Downs, Richardson, and of course Jonathan Taylor. And gosh, for the Giants, just a little bit tougher because Drew Lock now, 1 touchdown, 7 interceptions under center. We saw the Falcons get 2 pick sixes last week. I know people have been stashing the Colts defense for weeks now, waiting for this matchup for the fantasy championship just to be ahead of it. And the Colts defense are an amazing start here. But at least you can still, knowing he's going to get double-digit targets, as he did this past game, 13 targets for Malik Neighbors. The results are not his fault. These are, of course, inefficient targets as the pocket continues to crumble, and Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, whoever's under center, are just slinging it upfield, hoping Neighbors can come down with a hard contested catch. You know Neighbors will get the opportunity at least. So continue starting Neighbors in the fantasy championship. And then Tyrone Tracy as well. We saw him, remember, at Purdue. Rookie Tyrone Tracy only played running back for 1 season and was very good at it. But also to come down with 4 catches this past week, had a receiving touchdown, and even showed that wide receiver skill set that he had for 3 seasons in college, where Drew Lock finds him at the back of the end zone. Tracy's catches the ball at the high point and then looks downfield or looks down and steps both toes in. A running back usually can't do that. Tyrone Tracy can. And so the fact that Tracy's still involved in the passing game and still out carrying Devin Singletary, I don't mind flexing him here, even in this negative game strip most likely in 12 and 14 team leagues.
We got an awesome week to drink some Smirnoff cocktails and enjoy football. How about Christmas Eve? Christmas, we got 2 games, including the game I'm calling. Thursday night, Saturday, Sunday. Guess what? Smirnoff and the NFL are with you every step of the way. Smirnoff is the world's #1 vodka. Plus, they are an official vodka partner of the NFL. This holiday season, when you're enjoying the game and your cocktails, please make sure to drink responsibly. Take a minute, make a plan, never drive impaired. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff #21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please do not share with anyone under legal drinking age. Smirnoff, we do game days. Last but not least, for episode #1, we've got the Jets and the Bills.
And it's like Aaron Rodgers told the media. We're going to see who wants to show up for the Jets now. Lots of complaining coming out of their locker room, including Garrett Wilson. He opens the game with a 15-yard catch on the first drive, and then practically ignored from Aaron Rodgers for the next 55 minutes. 4 of Wilson's 6 catches came on the final drive when the Jets were pretty much out of it already. He's asked about it in the locker room afterwards. He says all the right things because he's a professional, but very clearly Aaron Rodgers has been leaning heavily into Devontae Adams in particular. Adams, who continues trending as a wide receiver 1 even in this very tough game. And that's the key here, is that this is a really tough game on the road against this Bills defense that, yes, I understand the Patriots, I believe, reached 28 first downs last week, but also that's seemingly a letdown performance for the Bills, who had played 2 high-octane indoor games in a row against the Rams and Lions, coming into that one, heading back home, trying to get up for that matchup against New England. I think this one's entirely different now that the Bills have swept that one under the rug. And more importantly, I think it's going to be continued success for James Cook against this Jets front 7 that we just talked about. Kyren Williams had no issues running all over. And now James Cook in back-to-back games, the RB4 in fantasy, including a top 10 performance in 4 of his last 5 starts. Given the game script at home, given what the Jets have become on offense, it just seems like an impossible spot for New York, quite honestly. So love going back to James Cook in the fantasy championship.
Ooh, love it. It's interesting to see the success they've had with James Cook running the football. He's been very, very good. I don't know what that says about the Patriots' run defense going against, you talked about it a little bit earlier, going against the Chargers on Saturday in my game. Check out John on social media at @NotJDaigle. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. The show, of course, is at Ross Tucker Pod. We greatly appreciate those of you that rate and review the show. That means a lot to us, or engage with the show on social media in any way. We want to make sure we had this ready for you for Christmas Eve, so you can make sure you get all your picks in for Christmas Day. I'm going down, John, as soon as we're done recording, to be with my sister, my nieces and nephew. I don't get a chance to do that very often. Anything exciting for you today or tomorrow?
I will be writing matchups with Evan Silva. That is pretty much my work entails on Christmas week with everyone. But hopefully still everyone has a great holiday. Again, we're doing 2 episodes on Tuesday. It's a crazy week. Even we got injury reports on Sunday while football was going on. That's how crazy of a week it is. But I think we're still providing enough information for everyone for the fantasy championship.
Love it. Make sure you're checking him out on social. I told you that, but actually go to establishtherun.com to see those matchup reports with Evan Silva. Use the code FEAST. Other than that, still got some room for dessert. Heck, it's the holidays. Why not?
Thanks for tuning in to Fantasy Feast. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcasts on your favorite platform.